I'd like to give you a simple demonstration today as to why so many warm season grasses are scalped at the very beginning of the spring growing season. Right here in front of me, I got 5 completely different types of warm season grass. This is late February. I live in Southern California, so our soil temperatures are in the upper 50s right now. Some of these warm season grasses are semi-dormant, some are obviously flourishing, and some are still nearly completely dormant. This is the perfect time of year to actually scalp these to show what happens. Now, the meat of this demonstration is going to be this pot right here, which is buffalo grass. From far away, this grass looks completely dead or 100% dormant, but I know for a fact that it's not because I can see green, just little tiny bits of green, way down deep underneath the brown foliage. Also know that it's completely ready to grow and be green because I also have buffalo grass growing along the side of my street. It has fully greened up right now. And the reason for that is because it's really short and it's not covered up with all of the brown dormant grass that would have grown in the prior year. Now over here on the end, this is Bermuda grass. Bermuda grass is probably the warm season grass that gets scalped the most often, sometimes a couple times throughout the year. The reason why this grass is completely green and growing right now is because it was very short and it didn't have a brown canopy shading the soil underneath it as we went into the early part of our spring season. This right here is St. Augustine grass. St. Augustine is probably the least often scalped and there's the least reason to do it. It wants to grow very tall. And as you see, these gangly stolons that come out the sides, if you scalp it too low, you're going to cut too many of them. And because the grass doesn't have rhizomes underground, it will really stunt St. Augustine as you push into the warmer parts of late spring and the early part of summer. Typically, you're never going to scalp this. And if I was really caring for this pot, I would just trim it up, give it a cut off the brown tips, and then let nature wake it up all by itself. But I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to scalp it just to see what happens. But I'm only going to scalp one side of the pot. Same goes for the buffalo grass in this pot. I'm literally going to trim one side of the pot and scalp the other side of the pot so that we can see which side of the pot, or we could compare the differences between the scalp side and the side that's just mowed short. I guarantee you that the scalp side is going to look much healthier, much earlier in the season than the side that isn't scalped or it's just cut. Now over here, this is kikuyu grass. The pot looks kind of gangly. It's not as nice as the others, but the grass in particular isn't a very desirable grass. However, you're going to find it all over the place in the state of California, and you're going to find it in various places throughout Arizona and Hawaii. The lawn, my neighbor's lawn behind me, has a lot of kikuyu grass in it. In fact, most of the lawns in my neighborhood is probably kikuyu grass. Very few people talk about scalping kikuyu grass, but considering the fact that kikuyu grass is very similar to Bermuda in that it's got stolons and rhizomes underground, and it is incredibly aggressive, we can scalp this all the way down to the bottom and get rid of these gangly stolons, these really thick stolons that we don't want. We can't do it with the St. Augustine, but we can with the kikuyu. Now over here, this is centipede grass. Centipede grass never went dormant this year. It's got a very low threshold for, let's see, how do I put that? The temperature can drop quite a bit and it will still look perfectly fine, totally green. But eventually, as you get down to freezing, it just dies, almost like the flip of a switch. Centipede grass is a very low maintenance grass and it's not normally scalped. In fact, I don't see a reason to even try to scalp it because the whole point of scalping these lawns is to get rid of gangly stolons that start creating a mat on the ground, which of course we wouldn't do with St. Augustine, but it's also to get rid of all of this brown so that the soil can warm up and the grass can start greening up and growing. We want that to happen earlier in the season. We don't want to have this like kind of semi-dormant looking lawn for like an extra month into the spring. So for this demonstration, I'm not going to scalp that one, but I am going to scalp half of this. I'm going to scalp all of this. I'm going to scalp half of this, and that I'm just going to trim because it looks great. I got to pause and go get a broom. It just dawned on me I'm trimming stolons off of warm season grasses right next to my lawn that I don't want those things in the lawn, so I got to broom them up. There we go. Bermuda will literally reroot right back into that lawn, which wouldn't be catastrophic since underneath all of this green is some dormant Bermuda. But I wouldn't want to mix in the buffalo or St. Augustine or kikuyu in there for sure. All right, here we are the next day. I ended up taking the pots into the garage after filming yesterday to do the real trim. There's no wind in the garage, so I didn't want stolons and grass going all over the place. Plus, it took a lot longer than you want to watch. Today's February 23rd, so I trimmed them on February 22nd. Let's go take a look at, generally speaking, the starting point. I'm going to come back in about 14 days or so to give an update to see what these pots look like after the scalp, after it's had enough time to recover. In particular, I want to look at the differences between that buffalo grass, between the scalped side and the just mowed side. On my way over here, I want you to see this buffalo grass here on my parkway strip. I understand that it's very thin. That's because it's new from seed from last year. It's going to fill in throughout the course of the spring, but notice how green it is. That amount of green is in comparison to this buffalo grass, same stuff, which is mostly brown. Now over here, I'm going to call this the mowed side, even though I use scissors, but you can see that there's still plenty of green in there. So I cut it down short. Here's one that I missed, but there's a whole bunch of green in here. Now over here, I cut it much shorter. I had to use special scissors, tiny little scissors to get in there. Proper scalp, I'd even get it shorter than that, but I would call that about 1/2 inch or so. Over here, it's more like maybe 1.25 inches. I contend that this side right here is going to look very full and green compared to this side, which is still going to look dirty green with a whole bunch of this brown showing. Now here's the Bermuda grass. This, I just kind of cleaned up the edges. I never really trimmed the top. Kind of ran out of time yesterday, but it does look good. So I'll probably just continue trimming this once every few days or so with the scissors to keep it tidy. But this looks, that looks really nice. A lot of times you're going to find Bermuda grass cut extremely low. So the really low scalp is going to make a big difference for this if you're coming out of winter with a full brown like we see over there. Because this was very, very short with dirt exposed 4 to 5 weeks ago. We've had plenty of sun and warm enough temperatures to green this thing up, and it's been growing like crazy. So I'm just going to maintain it this high because I can't cut this 1/2 inch with hand scissors very easily. Likewise, my pot of centipede grass, I just kind of cut off the tips, the leaf tips with my scissors. I'm just kind of leaving it like that. I want to see how fast the centipede grass grows into this spaces on the side. I actually literally have to hand weed over here on the side every now and then. But it still looks like a really nice grass. This one, the St. Augustine, ultimately I decided to not scalp 1/2 and 1/2. This is a beast of a grass. The stolons, look at the stolons on the side that I had to cut by hand or with hand scissors. Look how thick that thing is. This is arguably over thick. So I'm considering, seems silly because it's in a pot, I'm considering core aerating it, not to break up compaction, but to literally remove some material in this. So I haven't decided on that yet, but you can see it looks way better just by cutting it down. It's not a full scalp, but I certainly cut it down quite a bit. I stick my finger in there. It's actually hard to get through all the stolons. But you can see I'm still barely touching the soil with my fingertip. So it's probably about 3 inches or so. I should measure my finger to see how deep that is. About 3 inches. Here's my kikuyu grass. I cut that way down to the bottom. My dirt is actually not quite level in here. Some of these stolons here on the ground, I was about ready to cut them, but they have barely rooted down in the middle. So I'm just going to leave those there. So I'm going to let this keep going. I might even add a little bit of soil to this in a couple weeks or so, maybe even a couple days or so, just to level it out and maybe bring it up a little bit. Biggest takeaway here, though, is no matter what, this grass, even though it's just cut right to the bottom, like if I put it right there, that's the dirt. The dirt is right there. Maybe there's some lift right there because the dirt goes away, but this is all the way down to the bottom. Look at that right there. It's just cut right to the stalk, right to the stem. This is going to come back with a vengeance, and it's going to look so much better than it did yesterday. But the biggest one I'm most interested in tracking is the buffalo. Comparison from mowing versus scalping in the same pot. Can't wait for that buffalo grass strip to come in. Oh, it's going to look good.
11 days has passed. My pots have been outside. Things are starting to grow back. Take a look at this buffalo grass pot, though. the scalped side is looking notably greener and thicker. Obviously, it's still got a ways to go, but it sure does look a lot better than this. I'm going to let it keep going a little bit longer so we can see an even more dramatic difference. In the meantime, I've already got to cut my Bermuda grass back again. It's getting gangly already. Cool season grasses there, still looking okay. Kikuyu actually looks way better after that scalp. I was thinking I'd add a little bit of sand soil mixture in there to kind of bring that soil level up. St. Augustine is starting to grow back. We've got some nice tips here. There is still a good bit of the kind of the dead stuff or the dormant stuff in here, and it's still a little thick. I still need to figure out, decide if I want to thin that out anymore. Centipede is really starting to go gangbusters. It's looking really great.
All right, here we are 22 days after I scalped and trimmed all of my warm season grass pots. Let's go take a look at them, especially the buffalo grass, the one that I really scalped. All right, buffalo grass pot is the closest to my truck. Let's start with the stuff that's closer to me. Here's kikuyu grass. And get my shadow out of the way. Kikuyu grass is starting to get a little bit dry. This pot has the least amount of soil, so it dries out the fastest. I did trim this not that long ago, but you notice that you don't really see a lot of dirt so much, except for over here. This is where it was the thinnest. This is the stolon that I almost pulled out of the ground, but I decided to leave it there because it is mildly rooted down. It's still growing. In fact, we've got a brand new shoot coming off of it right there. Still need to top this off with sand soil mixture to add a little bit more material in there. St. Augustine grass, I have not trimmed this once in the past 22 days. I almost trimmed it, but I didn't. And I haven't thinned it out. So I've been under the weather here for the past 10 days or so. So I haven't done what I wanted to do. I still want to thin this out. I do want to thin this out. But it's very clear that there's a lot of healthy grass in here that's really starting to come back. The centipede grass has been thriving like nobody's business. I've had to cut this back. It is really fluffy. This is really soft. It's making me think maybe over here in Ventura County, Southern California, centipede grass might be a pretty darn good option because this thing never went dormant. It never stressed out over the winter, and it is thriving in the spring. It's awesome. Still waiting for the spreading to happen over here. But as you see right here, this to me looks like a vertical, or not a vertical, a lateral stolon going side to side. I expect this really to fill in the edges around this pot. All of this was grown from seed in the fall last year. So it's doing really good. So I've had to trim this back hard. I've never scalped it, but it is thriving, like really, really doing fantastic over here. So it's got full sun at all times. We got rain last week. I haven't watered it since. It's drought tolerant. It's just doing really good. I tried to actually tip this over and pull the whole thing out to take a look at the root mass, the root system, but I couldn't get it out. Down here, you see there are literally roots trying to escape the bottom. Oh, and a spider trying to escape. Roots are all the way to the bottom of this. Look at it. They're coming out the edges. This thing is doing amazing. And this was made from sprigs from my main lawn. So I literally took sprigs, stuck it in this, and covered it up with a little bit of peat moss, and it has grown in amazing. And of course, it's rooted down. What is that, like a foot? It's rooted down like 12 inches at least. And it's only been probably like 6 months over the off season during the winter. Lastly, let's look at the buffalo. Buffalo is the one that I was most interested in for this project because it was the one that I was truly scalping down. It was fully dormant, fully brown. Everything over here, I just cut at about 1.25 inches. And so I was basically calling that a low mow on this side. And over here, I went and I took some special scissors. I got it as close to the ground as I could reasonably with the scissors. I called it about 1/2 inch. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but look at it. Over here, you've got spotty green with a lot of brown. But over here, you're starting to see almost only green. And the height This has almost caught back up to this. Now we're still lagging over here in this little section. But after 22 days and minimal water, like I haven't watered this since it rained a week ago or so, maybe a little bit more than that at this point, everything is still coming back in. Everything over here is looking much more green than everything over here. If you do have a warm season grass like buffalo or Bermuda or Zoysia, then you literally have to consider doing a hard scalp before your spring growing season really gets going. If you don't, you're going to be battling the old leaf material. This leaf material does not come back in the spring. This is dead leaf material. This plant regrows from the soil, new shoots, new leaves. Now here's a new stolon that's coming out of the ground. I didn't cut that off 22 days ago, so this stolon is still ongoing. One thing I didn't say earlier in the video is this plant right here, buffalo grass in particular, does not have underground rhizomes. It's only above ground stolons. So it's similar to the St. Augustine over there. You do want to scalp it, but notice that the stolons are significantly skinnier, much more low profile than the St. Augustine stolons. You can scalp this down fairly well and stay away from the stolons. So you're not going to want to take a weed eater to the ground and cut it to the dirt, but you can cut it as low as you possibly can. So long as you're leaving these stolons on the ground, they will continue to come back. Scalp it down low. Don't get rid of all of the stolons, and you're going to have a much greener lawn before anyone else in the spring. Remember, this is only March 15th right now. It's not even spring yet. This is technically still winter. We got another video up here about scalping the lawn. This is supposed to answer all of the questions that you have about scalping the lawn that you probably haven't even thought of to ask. Take a look at that next.